Hi, my name is Amina Senna. Today we're going to be talking about monitoring our grasslands and how we make sure that the vegetation is healthy and abundant so that we can put our livestock onto these healthy grasslands and graze them into the future, and that our children can graze them into our future. For more than 15 years, I have been helping the United States Forest Service, international programs, educate people from around the world on the value behind monitoring our grasslands and assessing the vegetation and the soil condition health. Vegetation and soil monitoring is the collection, analysis, and interpretation of data used to make management decisions on a grazing strategy. So, why do we monitor? To determine if livestock grazing management objectives are realistic. To determine if livestock grazing strategies are meeting the objectives. Also, it provides a record of vegetation and soil conditions so you can look at and observe trends over time. This is important so that we can evaluate, see if management changes are needed, and assist our grazing communities in making those correct management decisions. Pretty much, if you're monitoring, you're normally going to avoid having any accidents or overgrazing your grasslands. In the Southwest United States, as in the mountains of Morocco and the valleys of Lebanon, there are fragile ecosystems across the world where forage, the abundance of our grasslands, and our water resources is very important. The issue is that rangelands across the world have been degraded over the last several decades by an elevated amount of grazing intensity. We used to graze as nomadic tribes and go from one place to another, and in doing so, we always allowed the grasslands an amount of rest. Now, in our more static nature of staying in one place, we no longer have this rest, and we're grazing areas all year long. Every time the grass tries to recover, it's again eaten, and again until one day those grasses aren't able to grow up anymore. A good perennial grass is like a soccer ball player. You can kick him in the knees, kick him in the shins once he sits out on the bench, he can come back in the game. But if you kick him in the knee again and again in that same place on the shin, eventually he's out of the game. Perennial grasses like to be grazed, but if you overgraze them again and again all year long, soon you don't see the perennial grasses and the abundant grasslands. Instead, you see large areas of bare soil, and all that soil, topsoil, is eroding into our waters, our streams, and our reservoirs downstream. It's costly to dredge our reservoirs. It's a better management decision to keep the topsoil on our grasslands so they can be abundant. So, what's the solution? The solution is let's restore our grasslands. The first step to restoring our grasslands is to monitor their current condition. By looking at the vegetation and the soil health, looking at these monitoring indicators, it allows us to change grazing management strategies so that we are always going towards our desired condition. Well, didn't you know perennial grasses are your best friend? The depth of a perennial grass root is like so much deeper than the annual grass in comparison. A tiny annual grass just does not hold the soil the way an amazing perennial grass does. These perennial grasses are what holds our grasslands into place. Why is it important to monitor the soils? Well, didn't you know that topsoil is like gold? Topsoil has all the organic matter and good nutrients to let those perennial grasses thrive. If the topsoil is eroding away and no longer in that location, you will not see the perennial grasses either. The topsoil and the perennial grasses relate to each other, and they need one another to produce our abundant grasslands. To get started restoring our grasslands, let's start by a simple monitoring approach. The videos in this series were selected to show easy to repeat soil and vegetation monitoring techniques. Measure and record that data, analyze that data, and with it, create solutions. Come up with grazing management strategies that work for our communities so that we can graze our grasslands into the future.